Okay guys, so we're about 2 months late, but we're going to do a review on Clip Studio Paint version 5.0 and all the features that it entails. So better late than never, we're going to try and pick it up on this channel. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first feature we're going to look at is the Smart Shape. Traditionally in Clip Studio Paint, you draw a line and you draw it manually. Or you used to use the default brushes because it came with a figure tool brushes, which if you go here and you go to figure, and you go to like, let's say direct draw, drag all of this right here, right? Bam, you use a curve tool, you know, and which worked out pretty well. You can adjust the brush size. You can change the brush shape, so you can use a different brush texture. So it worked out pretty well. But now Clip Studio Paint has a smart shape to where, hey, now you don't have to do any of that. You can just make it yourself using the brush you already want to use. So if I just use, you know, one of my manga brushes like this, and I just want to do a straight line, now it'll automatically do that. Right? Once I did it and I held it on the screen for a couple seconds, and then I release it, and then it has an edit button to where you can kind of edit this and choose what you want to do, which is pretty cool because you can, usually this is limited to a vector layer. So the fact that you can do this is pretty cool, right? It's not perfectly unjanky, but it works pretty well, you know? And also if I do this and I hold shift, then it'll make a perfect shape, right? So it's pretty simple. If you want to turn off, you just go to your preferences, right? So just go here, you go to tools, you go scroll down and then go to hold to create figures right here. And you can also adjust the length of time it will use to create a figure. So it is a spitting image of Procreate down to the implementation and the settings. You can also change the seconds on Procreate too. Works pretty well. I like it. This is actually a quality of life feature. I will say that I think is cool for somebody like me or people who've been using digital software that didn't have this feature, because we're already used to doing it manually, right? So when this is added later, then you already have the muscle memory to draw well, and which is one of the fundamental things to drawing, you know, because make no mistake, this is a shortcut, but it's not conducive to growing or learning. If you really need to do it, then you'll use the shape tool. Normally, to save time, you just want to try and do it yourself, right? So the fact that it was that much more kind of inaccessible in terms of manually selecting the shape tool, manually changing the size, manually changing the brush shape. What I'm saying is it being more further out of reach convince you to not rely on it. You know what I mean? So if you've already built the muscle memory and hand eye coordination to consistently draw a linear line smoothly, then after that, in my opinion, it's okay to add an additional shortcut and to use this, knowing that you already know how to do it. So that's my opinion on that. I feel it will actually harm newer artists who just get into Clip Studio Paint, who, you know, that option is on by default. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use that. You're gonna know how to draw digitally and not know how to draw comprehensively, you know? So moving on. So now for some of these features, I'm gonna have to skip it because like faster rendering speed, there's no way I can test it without downloading another older version of Clip Studio Paint. But having said that, one of the things you never really see for Clip Studio Paint's new additions is speed improvements. So I'm happy that we're finally seeing something like that, because this is actually what matters. Now let's go to 3D hand model. So let's go here. So this is a design. Obviously, this is like a concept sheet of me trying to design this character. In particular, what type of glove are they going to be wearing and in the arm guard, because this character is an archer for my upcoming comic. In this case, this hand was kind of hard for me to draw because I wanted her palm to be open and it to be showing towards the viewer, kind of show how the glove looks like and how the arm guard connects to the glove. And you know what I used was this hand right here. Boom. So if you go to your 3D materials, and you go to 3D and you go to hand, so it has one for the left and the right hand. So in this case, then this is her right hand, right? So I'm going to go here and drag this here. This is probably the best hand reference tool I've ever used out of any drawing software. Even for software dedicated to mannequin posing, this is the best hand tool I've ever seen. Why is that? It's because it's so modular. You can turn this and it operates just like a typical Clip Studio Paint 3D model, right? The magic of this is the fact that each individual digit and the pose of the hand is customizable of what a hand would do. You slide it to the left and the fist becomes more closed. So it's pretty self-explanatory. I really don't even need to explain it really, which is a good thing. The indications on what to do is very clear. You don't often see that from bloated software like this. And obviously if I slide to the right, the hand gets more open. Of course, you can turn it, twist it, and you can see exactly what's going on. That's the key, is it's so modular, you know? And so it's kind of similar. The more you go up, the more kind of specific you want the movement to be according to what digit, what hand, what. So same thing, if I click here, this is so cool. This can go in or out. You can do it individually. See how I did it here? That was for the whole hand. But here, this will be individually for each finger. Let me just try to replicate this hand that I did. And let me just do it from a completely new kind of template. So you're going to see that very quickly. I'm going to be able to match this hand that you see on the actual picture. And now let me go back to the original camera angle. And as you can see, it's kind of almost there pretty much, you know. Realistic textures for metal and gloss. This is what I do have a problem with. You can tell that Clip Studio Paint is mainly a software that listens to Japanese animation studios. Japanese animation companies that make contemporary anime, what I call Chunk 3 anime, to ease their process and their pipeline in order to make modern anime. Modern anime that features modern settings in a D&D styled world or a Japanese school. And it often features a school club. Think about this. On the top, you have a musical instrument. So in other words, a school club that plays music. On the bottom, you have RPG-esque, D&D-esque, Dragon Quest coded examples. It's been such a bias when it comes to what they choose to update and what they choose to prioritize, that no one's asking for something like improving the metal and gloss. No one's using Clip Studio Paint as a 3D modeling software. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to compete with Blender? Are you trying to compete with Maya, 3ds Max, Cinema 4D? What are you trying to do? You know what I mean? It seems chaotic and weird, because if they're doing this and you're not going all in, what are you doing? No, you're just doing some use case specific thing that someone has asked you that has more of a voice in your ear. That's the problem. They're not making a software for just artists, general artists and animators. They're making it for a specific person or a specific company for a specific studio. And you can just tell, because all of the updates, if you read in the past 3, 4, 5 big updates, have all just been some random 3D model improvement to shading into this and just something super random that no one uses Clip Studio Paint for. And if they did want to do that, then they'd go to an actual 3D modeling software. And this is why Clip Studio Paint appears to not have any sort of direction in the last like 4 years. You know, it just seems all over the place. This is exactly why. This is my problem with this. You go to the portal of Clip Studio Paint, and this is like, oh, you have to go to some random website and request it on Reddit. Like versus you look at Krita, you look at Procreate, then they have gigantic forums and websites dedicated to people asking questions and requesting features, and you have the developers in there responding. Clip Studio Paint has none of that. Having said all that, I don't care about textures of metal and gloss. If I did, I'd learn Blender. Paint more on 3D model types. Okay, let's just try and see what they've done, right? So let's just go here. Maybe something like this. Yeah. Okay, so you can see you can now paint on this, right? Do I have any sort of, yeah, there you go. You can do this, right? And then if I go to the operation object tool, then you can see that I painted on it, right? Completely useless feature. Tool icons can now pop up in related palettes. Now this is actually a good one. Makes your UI even more customizable. So how do you do this? Well, your tool group will pop up if you hover over it, if you set this on, I believe. So if you go here and you go to pop up related palettes for each tool, bam, right here, and then you take this off. And so then you'll see that you press it and then it'll pop up with the tool group, you know? So this is very helpful for spatial concerns. If you're on iPad, you're on Android, very good, you know, I'm impressed. And Clip Studio Paint is already the master at UI customization, better than any other digital software. So this just made it even better. Tonal correction for multiple layers. I remember the videos I made once upon a time about Clip Studio Paint group coloring. This is a step in the right direction. Let's go back to that animation. So going back to this project, you can see that the colors are all separated, like we previously mentioned, right? And with the hair, with the shading. And let's say that for hair in particular, each frame is a different hair frame color, right? So if I go to frame 11 and I take this off, then you'll see that frame 11 won't have a hair color. So according to this update, tonal correction on multiple selected layers at once. So you know the reason why this still isn't good for animators, and this isn't a alternative solution to my dilemma for my previous 2 Clip Studio Paint videos, is the fact that you can't do tonal corrections on more than one layer if it's in an animated folder. So watch this. And I have a shortcut for hue saturation. So I'll go to hue saturation, and then that also works fine. Now, if I try and select another layer and do hue saturation, look what it says. You cannot be used on the following layers 221. Only if I select every layer, and you know what's about to happen. You drag it out of the hair layer, and I still have every option selected, and I go to the shortcut for hue saturation. Now I can do a tonal correction on all layers, you know? And here I expect it to be a bit slow because that's what, 21 layers. So, you know, now I can do it. And then I can do it for other tonal corrections, right? So brightness contrast, you can do the same thing. So to me, that's cool, but for an animator, kind of useless still, you know? Batch delete empty layers and hidden layers. Now this is a great feature. I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot of good features here. So I'm just gonna go to insert for a new layer. And then I press Control, click on the layer. Or without the shortcut, I'll selection from layer, create selection. And it'll tell you that selection was not created. So this is how I use to make sure that there's something on the layer. I just simply Control, select the layer, and selection not created. So I know there's nothing on the layer, and so I just delete the layer. So how they're talking about is you can just have a shortcut for that, which is cool. So I'm just gonna make a couple layers like this, right? So delete layers, empty layers. Do you want to delete all empty layers? This will not apply to lock layers. Delete. Not bad, not bad. And if I do my history tool and I go back to where I first deleted the layer, it looks the same. See that? Improve layer comps for multi-page works. Apply select layer comps to multiple pages at once. Honestly, that's not bad. That's a pretty good change. I'm slowly warming up to layer comps. It's a very good tool to compare 2 different versions of a picture side by side. And I'm probably going to make a whole video on using layer comps because I really like that. Graph of daily creative hours. Now, this is something that Clip Studio Paint has needed for a long time. So where is this at though? Like I would want this like Procreate. I would want that to be in your file, per file, right? So my creative hours in Clip Studio, how do you get there? Is this on the site? So I'm just going to look around for it and I'll let you know when I find it. Okay, so you have to go to the Clip Studio software, not the Paint software. You have to go to accounts, go down to my creative hours. And then here, with your consent, you can start recording. First off, again, why isn't this in the Paint software? And why isn't this just some option in your file that can tell you how long you spent on a project? That's all I want to do. Is this isn't that complicated or crucial. And the fact that it says that only activated with your consent, that's a red flag, which means that what type of data are you freaking stealing and giving to AI? You know, like that's, what do you mean by consent? You're just recording the time like, why is it so hard? Why don't you just have an offline option that's attached to the file? You know, there's some fuck shit going on with this. Any information on the canvas content or personal identifiable information will not be received. Recorded data is saved on servers tied to Clip Studio Paint. Whatever they're saying, oh, no, it's going to be okay. It's with your consent, you know, we're not going to take any personal data. When they say that, that means they are. That's what that means. If they're starting with apologies, which means they're planning on doing something nefarious. You have to be an idiot to turn this on. Let me just say that. Simple mode. Now, another rant. I'm going to try to make this quick. What is simple mode? Simple mode is Clip Studio Paint competing with Procreate to just have a sketchbook simulation for your tablet, right? I mean, HiPaint already does it with Android, which is a great software, by the way. And Procreate dominates on Apple. And so why is this a problem? It's what I said earlier. Clip Studio Paint stretching so far thin. They want to compete with Procreate. They want to compete with Blender. They want to compete with TV Paint and Toon Boom with their animation options that hasn't been updated in freaking 7 years. They already started as a Photoshop clone, you know what I mean? That was meant for comics, which was called Manga Studio. So notice how there's not a single option here. So there hasn't been a single comic specific change. This is what I'm talking about. They're spreading themselves so far thin and they're trying to do everything at once. And that's a hallmark of a software that does nothing great, that tries to do everything. Clip Studio Paint's fortunate that they're doing this today though, because they made so much headway when it comes to making this the best Photoshop clone. And they've long since surpassed Photoshop when it comes to digital art, that it's still the best Photoshop equivalent for a digital artist. But the changes they're making now is, here's another question. If I have an iPad, why would I use simple mode when I can use Procreate? Simple mode competes with Procreate, right? And it attempts to do what Procreate does, give you a simple, garnished UI for newcomers and for people who want to do just hobbyist work, right? Okay, and let's just go to simple mode, right? I don't even know how to open simple mode. How do you open simple mode? I've literally never wanted to open it. As you can tell, I'm not a fan, right? Am I not seeing it? I know there's so much bloat and there's so much options in front of me. Am I not seeing it? Okay, so after a long bit of researching, I found out that simple mode only works in tablets, not on the desktop. Wow. Okay. So I can't show you how idiotic it is. It's not a Procreate clone, it's just a gimped Clip Studio Paint experience. Procreate is a very stripped down drawing experience, a sketchbook simulator intentionally. And because of that, the price reflects the experience. Procreate is a one-time fee, often less than $10. And it's one time and you own it forever. So Clip Studio Paint, the simple mode, is a subscription, which is tied to the desktop, the studio mode. And you can imagine Clip Studio Paint isn't designed for simple mode. So many of the things you take for granted that Clip Studio Paint studio mode can do is not going to be able to be done in simple mode, right? A complete waste of resources. And there has been certain updates where 80% of it has been simple mode updates. Who's using that? All in all, this is there's a good improvements, but does this requisite a new numbered version from 4 to 5? Is all these changes worth a new version? Hell no. And it's been that way ever since 2. They don't change enough to make a new version. All they simply do is just give you a low to moderate amount of changes, call it a new version, and so we can charge you again. So we can have an excuse to say, oh, this is a new version. You know what I mean? So your perpetual license is going to be out of date sooner rather than later. Because every year we have a new version and then we lock the changes to you have to upgrade to this version. So getting a perpetual license doesn't make any sense because in less than 365 days, your version is gonna be out of date because they just save all their changes and they intentionally don't update Clip Studio Paint throughout the year. And they save all their changes for the new version and then release it there so that you can pay for the new version. So that it's either subscription or nothing, you know? It's very scummy because you best believe if they didn't have subscription, then it would have been updated like 1.0 to where there was great updates way sooner, you know? But since they know it's a new number, we're saving all our updates till the next number, you know? Even though we already have them ready, but you know, we'll do that. I'm an honest dude. I'm not just going to be here and trying to get a subscription, trying to get favors, you know? However you can acquire it. I'm just going to keep it at that because this isn't like some moral company, you know? Yeah, that's what I got to say. That's my review of it. Maybe it was more pessimistic, but you know, let me know what you guys think or if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.